So when you turn your company's recruitment strategy away from things that sound like acquiring assets and instead like nurturing and fostering a particular culture that people are attracted to, who one, fortify that culture, but then two, are really proud to work there, are excited to work there, you can have a thriving company today and no company tomorrow. So when you have that kind of atmosphere, you really need to make sure you have a team that is excited to work there, that feels an investment in the company. And for us, the person that I brought on to do my talent management did a lot of community engagement for her art gallery. And it was another nonprofit organization, so she knew the nonprofit space. I know that you know how to run operations, and I know that you know how to run teams, but talk to me about how you support these teams. And that's where the community engagement piece came in, where I could see her cultivating conversations around a show that she was producing or really inviting people into the room. And so she was able to have really difficult conversations with poise. And I was like, that's what I want in my talent manager.
Welcome to Mission Control. At Peralta Design, we launch brands. But for now, let's launch right into this episode.
3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Everybody, welcome to this episode of Mission Control. This is your host, Ramon Peralta with Peralta Design, and we launch brands. And we have, I would call her an OG of the show because this is her second appearance here. Welcome back, Miss Mercy Quaye, founder and president of the Narrative Project.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the show. Can't wait to dive in and see all of the antics of post-COVID that you've been up to and all the changes and growth. And I'm so proud of you because back in the day we were doing our little mentoring calls and
I would call you up and be like, Ramon, how do I insert issue here? Right. It didn't even matter.
Right. And when's the next meeting? When can I call you back? But it's just been wonderful to see your growth and can't wait to dive into that and the cool space you have and all the good works that you're doing.
Appreciate it.
But before we do that, I have to say Jorge is disappointed that he can't get the Apple car that he was waiting for.
I was looking forward to it. I was going to be first in line. I was going to camp out. And
the Apple car, did you put the $100 deposit on the Apple car?
Not this time.
Okay. All right. So at least you didn't lose your deposit.
Right.
I guess if the Teslas cost that much, how much do you think the Apple cars would cost?
It was supposed to be at least six figures. At minimum, I think was 100,000.
That would have been the entry level.
Yeah, the entry level.
Oh,
that would have been you would still have to buy the driving package. That one, you literally, they just deliver it. You can look at it, but you can't actually drive in that one.
And if you actually did want windows, that was going to be more.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Oh, you wanted rear view mirrors? Oh, okay.
That didn't come in the original package.
We gotta get the upgrade.
A yearly subscription's got to sync to your iCloud.
Right. Oh, you wanted seatbelts?
The next version has reverse, so we have to wait a year for that.
For at least now, you just have to drive in a circle to get back to where you wanted to be. Just a bunch of U-turns. There's no reverse.
I mean, so they were trying to get into the EV space. I feel like almost every episode we talk about EVs in some way.
Funny how it's just been in the news so much because I think people had become pretty sold on EVs being the future. California releasing legislation and it being like it feeling inevitable. Yeah. And I feel like us who are car enthusiasts feeling like don't take my internal combustion engine. And now it feels like the tables have turned a bit. That while EVs are still doing relatively well, there's a lot of growth in the market. They're still not quite as bulletproof as they have seen before, especially with innovations like the hydrogen fuel cell and all these other potential other options, or just doing biofuels. So, I mean, I guess we'll see what happens. And I feel like Apple just saw the writing on the wall, realized how much, even though, they've got more money than however many countries in the world is like their annual gross revenue. They kind of saw that was going to be they weren't getting stuck in the sunk cost fallacy. They had already invested so much, realized it wasn't going to turn a profit. And maybe the Apple Vision Pro is doing well enough for them. They're like, hey, we know what our future is going to be.
Right. They
Right.
should just not stick to gadgets. Not
Gadgets
cars.
and wearables.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, $multi-billion was the number. 10-year project.
Right.
People have been laid off, and the whole concept scrapped. But I think they see like this isn't worth investing in anymore. I mean, they're getting into like they went from computers to cars. It's kind of a to me a big leap.
I think what would have been kind of interesting so that they could stay in their lane.
Yeah.
No
pun intended.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Is provide a operating system for vehicles that can be leased to other players in the EV space, right? You make operating systems. Create an operating system that you can lease to other EV makers. I think that would have been staying in your lane, but getting into the EV space. You don't have to have the I mean, when you're creating a vehicle, a car, you are investing in the facilities to create a car, right? And no one's going to do that better than the powerhouse of right, like GM, Buick, right? The big
dogs.
boys who have been in the manufacturing space for literally a century. So you're just not going to be able to enter the space in the same way.
And they were aggressive. It was going to be a 2028 debut. I mean, it's just, to me, what I found funny is that they're mostly known for like the iPhone and the iPad. Like I honestly would never have expected Apple to come out with a car, but I just think everybody was jumping on this EV bandwagon, and the hype is starting to kind of wear thin. I've been waiting for Porsche to come out with an EV, and they finally have come out with the Macan. And now I'm not as bullish. Like at first I was like, as soon as that comes out, I want it, but you're starting to see that in order to get more range, the vehicles tend to be smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So you're giving up some space, and then the infrastructure hasn't really gotten to where it needs to be in order to sustain
Which also is getting a big boost recently, in that apparently Tesla is releasing an adapter that's going to let any provider be able to charge at, so that becomes part of their network.
Yeah.
The downside is that, much like Apple's innovation of their Magic Mouse and how you have to plug it underneath so you can't use it. So the downside is, to use the adapter, you have to essentially park on the side of the charger, so you're taking up 2 spots.
Oh no!
And so that's not great.
Yeah. I'm leaning team hybrid, because I think it has some capabilities, but with the hybrid you have like almost two not 2 gas tanks, but 2 gas caps, and one's like for your plug and one's for the gas. It just seems to me like I feel more comfortable driving knowing like I could get gas or I could use electric, but like relying on one or the other is probably not the future.
And are you a big road tripper? Like, do you do road trips?
I like to. I don't just like pack up and go, but I think I just like knowing that I can.
Yeah.
But most of my commutes are short.
Okay. So my husband and I, we do a lot of like up to Maine, 6 hours. Catskills, 2 hours. Last year we did South Carolina in like twice in 2 months. So that's 15 hours. We've done out to
Road
Montana, and we're going to be driving out to Kansas in a few months for a bike race. So we just know an EV is never going to be suitable for us, right? It's just...
Well, never say never. I say not now, but...
It's technology got there,
right.
You know what I mean?
And I think at the point that it will, I just have this, probably a limiting belief system, but I just have this barrier to think that the way we are going to have to invest in infrastructure across the country in order to support EVs, I don't know that we have the political will to actually see that through.
Right. There's a lot of there's still a lot of barriers that would prevent you from being able to make a cross-country trip, confidently.
Right.
Is the other thing.
Yeah,
too.
and then you have, the guys that I know that have them, then love them, they're tech guys. Like, they know how to deal with gadgets, so they have no problem. They have chargers at home.
I think also that's probably what Apple was thinking. Is like, well, a lot of this consumer base are techie people anyway.
And when
Early
you price it at
adopters.
6 figures, you're not trying to go to the everyman anything.
mainstream.
Right, exactly.
Actually, that was the whole issue where all those cars were stuck in Chicago.
Yeah.
People were like, oh, we can't charge it. And a lot of people were saying like, well, yeah, if they followed the directions, then they wouldn't
Basically, yeah. Basically, they ran them low, and then it's cold, and then when it's cold, there's even a bigger drain. So I don't think we're ready for them yet. I think it's a good move by Apple to get out of that. But let's switch gears to
no pun intended.
Yeah, the Clippers logo, because right now, I mean, we're about to make a big reveal as an agency. I think we're at a good point, but we're
Exciting.
with CT United, shout out to them. But the trend right now is whenever a logo is revealed, it's like it just becomes like everybody's a critic, everybody's negative.
Everyone becomes a designer and an artist at the moment something gets revealed.
And I happen to like all the different design elements that they came out with. So like more or less the idea that they can have the clips by itself, they can have the new logo, which looks, some people have called it a bus token, or it looks like it harkens to like New England.
It does harken to New England.
It's got like the Clipper, which is a ship.
The nautical vibe. It's
a compass. They made the sea into a compass. So they got that whole thing. But, the Clippers for a very long time just played second fiddle to the Lakers. Like they really were like the Mets are to the Yankees. I'm sorry.
Wow.
But
okay. All right.
This feels personal.
All right.
Yeah. And I just want to remind y'all got company. So.
Well, like, I'm going to cut him deep live on that. Okay.
But, it's true. In the sense that they've always kind of been like the
Jets, Giants, the same thing. Yeah. There's a lot of, like, you have your little brother franchises.
But in recent years, with Blake Griffin and stuff, I think they're like, hey, we want some respect too. And hence the rebrand, because their logo was
the logo that they had before was
pretty bad, generic looking.
Very MS-DOS looking, like MS Paint. I think it was like it was any consumer could have created that.
Right.
Like, and I would not be surprised, the original logo, I mean, I would not be surprised if it was the result of, agencies sometimes embark on like a logo making contest. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the result of that. Knowing that it wasn't, the rebrand is necessary. My question for the rebrand team is, how much did you involve the consumer, the fans, in on the process?
It sounds like from what I've read, they did do a lot of focus groups, but ultimately it's ownership that decides.
Yep.
Like you get some visceral reaction. You try to anticipate what people are going to say before it gets released, but ultimately the owners were like, look, we like it. We have all these different iterations that, like the gear, it's all about selling merch, especially when it comes to team swag. And pride and all that. And they have iterations where it's just the C without the ship in the middle. So you just have like the C compass.
Nice.
That's a variation. Then you have clips, which is like what the shortened version of it on uniforms. So they have a lot of different variations. It all comes down to, creating a memorable mark. One of the challenges too is not to make it look so much like the LA Dodgers, because the LA Dodgers have the LA kind of intertwined.
Right.
The Clips now have,
which is, speaking of little brother franchises, I have to give that the Yankees and the Mets did similar elements, but distinct enough that as a fan like where you stand on that.
Yeah.
So it's definitely,
and the colors are distinct. Right. So the brand confusion is part of it. I happen to like it. It's just the climate that we have right now. Things get released on social, and
you can't make everybody happy. It's
you can't
literally
make everybody happy.
And there are people who, even if you would have made them happy, they live for being the curmudgeon. They because they're not happy unless they have something negative to say. It's just the nature of social media, where people feel the need to give their 2 cents and it being negative, or they feel like they haven't completed their duty.
And sometimes what we do on like the marketing and like comm side is we try to overcompensate and get as many people bought in on the process before it is announced and released. You can't get everybody bought in on the process. You just have to launch before, not before you're ready. So that let me not say that, but you have to launch. You have to figure out when the right time is to launch, because you're not going to please everybody.
Yeah,
Get the key stakeholders in the room. And then make the decision from there.
Now, in your line of work, sometimes you're called spin doctors, because you're trying to you're trying to like create a narrative, right, that is going to get people to feel a certain way or go a certain way or sway them into a certain way. So I think the storytelling of the logo, that's why I always tell our team when we're designing, every element of the logo has to means something. We
Yep.
can't put any arbitrary design elements in there because when we start telling the story, that's what's going to make people like nod and be like, yeah, I see it now. I see, the wolf is doing this, or there's an oak leaf in there, or whatever the design element is.
This moment you see the
has
arrow
to
in
make
FedEx,
sense.
for example, is one of those moments like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then you're
get
like,
it
oh,
now.
that's a good logo,
Right.
because it tells a good story. But speaking of good stories, when we come back, we're going to hear all about what Mercy's been up to at the Narrative Project. All right, well, this episode here is brought to you by the Connecticut Small Business Boost Fund. It gives small business owners access to flexible funding for capital expenditures and working capital and connects them with support services. Small businesses and nonprofits can borrow between $5,000 and $500,000 depending on eligibility and need. And you can spend how you spend the money. It could be equipment, payroll, utilities, supplies, marketing, advertising, all that good stuff. And they're very low interest over a 60 to 72 month term. You can get more information and you can apply at ctsmallbusinessboostfund.org. I think the last time you were here, it was during early.
It was during the pandemic.
It was like a weird time. It was like we weren't sure what was going to happen, if we were all going to become zombies. Or...
Exactly. And, I get this cat from Shelton asking me to come down, leave the comfort of my home to come in and do a podcast episode. But I mean, we had a really great time that last time and talked a lot about sort of the origin story of the Narrative Project and how we got to where we are today.
Yeah.
So you've seen a lot of that work as, an early mentor of mine. And I'm just really happy for the ways that TNP has made a mark on Connecticut.
Yeah, TNP. And you've scaled it quite a bit. You moved, because early on, it looked like you were in a basement kind of. There weren't many windows.
There was no windows. It was kind of like the Apple car. It was,
Oh, you want windows? Oh, that doesn't come with this package.
Oh, man. You didn't select that.
Right, you didn't opt for that. That's an upgrade.
That's with the 256 gigabyte engine.
Yeah, so we.
But now you're in a dope spot because I went over there to shoot the video for Concord.
Yeah, and so we are in 7,500 square feet downtown New Haven, above Olives and Oil, across the street from the Omni. It's pretty dope. We have a team of about 17 people. And some contractors who do various things. And so, yeah, it's been exciting work. We have engaged at this point altogether in our 5 years, because it's been 5 years since we launched. Yeah. This May would make 5 years since we launched. So we've helped more than 60 organizations supporting their storytelling one way or another. And so been very proud of that work. And we're just going to continue to grow. Yeah. As you talk about scaling, we've got a lot of scaling plans, not just here in Connecticut, but across the nation. And so we've got some news to share, and definitely
like
some
a TNP franchise,
kind of franchise. And I'm trying to get like you, a Florida office.
Good stuff. Now, how did you? Because one of the things, we had Larry Janeski in here. He's another leader that I look at as a mentor, and what he's done and how he's grown Connecticut Basement Systems. But for you, tell us about going from a journalist to team builder in chief, because you've been part of scaling is just kind of hiring the right people, knowing how to lead them. And what's that been like for you?
Yeah, the answer to this is going to be something that you deeply relate to as a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and me being a member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. Recruitment and retention is a big part of our model, right, in the sorority. And so having been, in Sigma Gamma Rho, we call it the vice president, the anti-bacillus, and the vice president of your chapter is your membership chair. And so I've been in my organization for 15 years.
Wow. Okay.
I know that's not much for you, Ramon, but
I'm the old timer here. It'll be 35 years this month.
Okay, so you schooled me. You sunned me a little bit on that one. No, but 15 years, and the majority of my time in the organization has been in the role of membership and recruitment. And so I got really good, even before opening an organization, opening a company, I got really good at understanding how to put teams together, right? Thinking about your chapter or your organization as a team that you need to identify skill sets and personalities that work really well together. Taking all of that and bringing it into my team building at TMP has been, I mean, the results speak for themselves. For me, I've been able to identify people who maybe had skill sets that were adjacent to what I was looking for, but looking at that adjacent skill set as equally valuable has been really good. And so I think about, the person doing my talent management, and historically that role has been referred to as human resources, but we are a anti-capitalist organization and a anti-racist, equity based organization. So we took all of the language out of our policies and principles and that sound capitalist, like human resources, right? We took that out and we said, no, we are actually
And almost the way you said that, it makes it seem like humans are expendable, right?
That's exactly
like it's a resource,
right?
It's like water or paper,
exactly, right? And that's how
I
never looked at it.
That's how a lot of big corporations view their talent pool,
exactly,
as an expendable resource.
Exactly, and it's like almost like inventory.
I know that's what I just felt like. I'm like, we need more toner.
We need more toner. We're running low on toilet paper. The social media team is under capacity. And so when you turn your company away from
I saw a sticker that said, you don't hate Mondays, you just hate capitalism.
You just hate capitalism. So when you turn your company's recruitment strategy away from things that sound like acquiring assets and instead like nurturing and fostering a particular culture that people are attracted to, you get people who, one, fortify that culture, but then two, are really proud to work there, are excited to work there. As a startup, things can happen. There's organic ebbs and flows. You can have a thriving company today and no company tomorrow. So when you have that kind of atmosphere, you really need to make sure you have a team that is excited to work there, that feels an investment in the company. And for us, the person that I brought on to do my talent management, her position is talent and partner relations manager. It is the person that is sort of between our staff and the organizations we serve, whom we do not refer to as clients, but instead as partners. So it's that person in between that says, all right, how do we ensure that we are cultivating and maintaining really great relationships between staff and effectively traditionally referred to clients? And so she does everything from your traditional HR management to like professional development, to if there's a breakdown of communication between the partner and the staff member, how can I come in and like support that relationship? But I wouldn't have been able to get her if I was looking at HR
right. How did you attract her? Because she'd have to, it's.
So she came from a bit of a community organizing background. In the arts specifically, and did a lot of community engagement for her art gallery downtown New Haven. And it was another nonprofit organization, so she knew the nonprofit space. And she was I believe her title there was assistant director or deputy director of the art gallery. So I know that you know how to run operations, and I know that you know how to run teams, but talk to me about how you support these teams. And that's where the community engagement piece came in, where I could see her cultivating conversations around a show that she was producing or really inviting people into the room. And so she was able to have really difficult conversations with poise. And I was like, that's what I want in my talent manager.
Nice. And a lot of it has to do with the culture that you've built. So when somebody comes in, how do you describe it to them?
This is real funny because in our hiring process, we have the last step is a group interview with the entire team, or as many people in the team that you can kind of get together. And folks have described TMP, like the staff will say, like, this is the best place you'll ever work at, but it's a fast pace environment. So you need to be able to manage your time well, while also understanding that you're going to be enjoying your time with your staff. And there's that balance. It's almost easier to do your work when you hate your team. Like,
You can focus.
You can focus. Like, don't come over here. Like, but when you like your team, it's like the need for an acumen towards time management is necessary, right? You're figuring out how to get 8 hours of work done in the day while also fending off 10 people on your team who are like, Mercy, let me ask you something. And it's something that I really want to engage in. And so
did you ever try project managers, or do you have one? Is there somebody that like hovers to each of the team members to see where things are?
So we have the way we're broken up, and I'm sure PD is built in a similar way. It's like we have little nodes, so to speak, or streams, and everything streams up and then back down. And so our streams are our partner or client-facing account management teams. So you'll have an account manager, an account associate, and a social media manager, and that makes a stream on its own. Over that person and or that team is our vice president of communications, who manages each stream by coming into your weekly stream meetings. And also we have something on a weekly basis called our strategic management team meeting. That's comprised of all of our account managers, all of our social media managers, and our account associates. For me and the vice president of communications to sit down and get a full report out. As we alternate weeks, it's not the full team every week. A full report out of wins and successes, challenges that you have to deal with the partner, open deliverables so that we know where a project is standing, and needs for support. And that's a big piece, because sometimes we have a team that trends a little younger, definitely all millennial, but might be a little younger. And so sometimes the piece that gets missing in a report out is the request for support, right? You're like, okay, I got this, I got to make time for this. But in that gotta make time for this, you're not communicating to your supervisor or whoever the project manager is that you're having trouble allocating time to finish this thing, right? And so because you're unable to ask for support, the project can trickle down, or like that thing that could have been delegated gets dropped altogether. And so we have created this apparatus where 2 times a week we're getting a full report out from the entire team of what are your needs for support? How can we lean in to make sure the project gets over the finish
line? And that
line?
it's okay to do so.
Exactly.
You don't need to be a hero.
You don't need to be a hero.
A modder.
We're all here together, and our single goal is to produce something that the partner likes and something that we can be proud of on our side.
So I know Concorp is one of the partners, and shout out to them. Any other that you've picked up recently of notoriety?
Yeah, so if folks are following some work down in New Haven, Emerge Connecticut is a organization that works, effectively their entire thing is to prevent recidivism. So they work with recently incarcerated and recently released individuals on various projects, usually construction projects throughout the state, I believe. So that's a really dope organization that we've worked with. We're still doing our work with Planned Parenthood of Southern New England, and that has been amazing to be a part of. It started with a lot of sentiment and tonality research, and then going from there to try to change the perception of Planned Parenthood, at the very least in Connecticut, as an organization that is, you go there as a teen, you don't find them, you don't ever come to them as like a general practitioner, right? You age out of using Planned Parenthood. And so what that work was with them is changing that narrative that, no, we're not here for your good. We're not only here for your good time, we're here for a long time.
Plus there was some, negative press out there.
Exactly.
They were like, there was some, I don't know if it was on a 2020 or whatever, I caught it, but there were folks that were mic'd up and having conversations, and the whole brand kind of took a hit.
The whole brand takes a hit. And I think there are moments that, you can't avoid, but if you are savvy enough, if you're paying close enough attention, you can figure out how, when you are in the moment, to avoid it getting worse, right? And so an example here is Planned Parenthood of Southern New England had a previous employee. This was in New Haven. They had a previous employee who no longer worked for them, but had been being investigated by local police.
Oh, no.
And in that investigation, local police do a raid on an apartment that they think is the man's apartment, but it was actually his neighbor's apartment. So, police botch story, and that's what it gets reported as. Police botch a investigation, terrorize or traumatize a New Haven resident. What doesn't get reported in the story is who they were looking for was the gentleman in the apartment next door. Or somewhere in the complex. And he had been under investigation for a period of time. He was a previous employee of Planned Parenthood. And again, previous employee. But the story gets picked up by Fox. And by the New York Post and all these other channels because it's like previous employee. And they said previous to their credit. They did say previous, but it doesn't matter because everything is a part of the brand. Right? Previous employee. This is the part that I didn't say in the initial story, kills himself after botched investigation.
Oh, no.
Botched police investigation. And this story gets picked up and blown up. And I go back to saying, you can't prepare yourself for everything. But if you're savvy enough and if you're a poised communicator, you can figure out exactly what are we going to do to navigate this crisis. Because you can't avoid crisis, but you can figure out how to make it, to not make it worse.
For you, I know as a leader, sometimes you're doing everything but what your gifts might be, like what you really enjoy doing. So how hands-on are you now? Are you in that chain of command where you get to see some of the writing and give your feedback?
So I am not doing nearly as much as I like to be doing. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs who are now running their companies, but started off kind of producing the content, producing the thing that made them a viable company in the first place, find themselves in that place. Like I'm not doing the things that I like to do as much as I'd like to do it. And something you told me real early on is there comes a time where you have to stop working in your business and start working on your business. And I made that pivot a little bit ago. But inside that pivot, I made sure that I was still in the loop because, a shout out that I want to give is Andrew Ferguson, who is with the Dalio Philanthropies. Something he told me real early on when I was launching is the biggest hurdle you're going to face is replicating yourself. Because as the name of the namesake of the organization, people are going to work with you. People are going to want to work with you. And so replicating yourself is going to be the biggest issue. So for me, I put the systems in place to ensure I was still in the mix. So like I said, the strategic management team meeting on a weekly basis, that's not just a report out from them. That's me ideating with them about the communications and public relations opportunities that they can seize for each of our partners. And so some of the best places where I that gets to show up for me is when a partner is in crisis. Everyone on my team knows that when a partner is in crisis, you escalate that up. That's not something that stays within your account management stream. That gets escalated up. And then we create a crisis management team for that partner, which can consist of that account management team. Well, will consist of that account management team. But it also may consist of now my vice president of communications, my vice president of social media, depending on what the crisis is, myself, my director of earned media relations. Depending on what the crisis is, we'll bring in additional people to ensure that that partner has a full breadth of expertise in the room, knowing exactly what levers to pull to get us out of this crisis.
No, absolutely. That's the leadership. And I think that with each one of those crises, your younger team members are learning.
Exactly.
Like, what's the shot? How do you handle this? And hopefully, less crises will take place. But that's that mentoring aspect too that you will do as a leader. I do want to talk about the coming back to office because we were talking about this a little bit. How has that been part of the culture that you've developed?
So I think, well, the place where I'll start is one mistake that I think a lot of employers are making right now is calling all of their staff back to office full time. And I just think what we learned in the pandemic, and this the best of us knew this before the pandemic, but what everyone knew during the pandemic is the work-life balance that one is able to achieve when you have a robust remote work policy is invaluable and cannot be compared to asking someone to stay at their desk in office. One piece that I've always brought with me every job that I've ever worked and now up to the company that I run is this piece from journalism. When I worked at the New Haven Register, and even before that when I was working at the Torrington Register Citizen up in Litchfield, Connecticut, one thing that we were always told is news doesn't happen in a newsroom. So it's actually the opposite of what people tend to think in a regular office space, that if you are in a newsroom, I'm assuming you're not working because news doesn't happen here, right? So I've always been oriented to this idea that people work best when they're in the environment where the work is happening. For you, that might mean one day a week you have to be in office to collaborate with the team. That might also mean 1 or 2 days a week you are actually at the partner's office because that's where you're getting your social media content for the month, right? And so it's really about thinking about things critically and examining, all right, is there a need to be in office? Are we getting increased collaboration? Are we getting increased productivity? If those things aren't increasing, then it's just arbitrary, and we shouldn't do things for the arbitrary purpose of it. And so before the pandemic, we always had a practice of Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays were our in-office days anyway. During the pandemic, we went 100% remote. Post-pandemic, or where we are now, it's sort of like we're going back to that hybrid model of Monday, Wednesdays, and we no longer
When did you switch to the 4 days recently, right?
we are piloting the 4-day work week, and we just launched this past February. So we're going to kind of observe it and see what happens throughout the rest of quarter 1 and into quarter 2 to sort of see if this is something that we're going to adopt fully. Yeah. But now what it means and looks like is our team is in office Wednesdays and Fridays, and out of office Tuesdays and Thursdays, which means you get a real easy start to the week. You're not in office on Monday. You're working from home Tuesday. You don't come physically back to the office until Wednesday, and that means you get a really easy start to the week.
Yeah. Now, with 7,500 square feet, you want to try to monetize that space.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. So some of the things that we do,
because you have that nice studio.
We got a studio. We have this sort of open space that acts as a bit of a like theater sitting kind of. So we've had people host trainings. Like some of our partners will come in and host trainings in our space. We've had design competitions. Are you familiar with AIGA? Yeah. So they had a design competition in our space, and we're able to sort of utilize the entirety of the space. I was approached by the organization is run by this young man. His name is Trey Moore. He does small concerts, kind of like a Tiny Desk concert in different places around New Haven. Basically, I didn't have T-Pain.
I'm going to buy you a drink.
Yeah. Didn't we tell you about these accents?
I'm in love with a stripper. And she rolling.
Ramon,
and she climbing that pole.
Right.
Ramon, when are we getting our 4-day work week? Does this start next month or the month after?
And so we've utilized this space in different ways.
I can see the look on Ramon's face. He's like,
why do you even say that?
Why do you
even say that?
These are my
specifically asked
senior
her.
staff. What are we doing?
And we're recording on a Monday, no less.
Yeah. She's like, yeah, can I come in on Monday? I don't work that day.
He typed back, must be nice.
Oh, man.
So we call ourselves the living room of the community because we want different organizations, especially organizations that are more grassroots and maybe don't have a meeting space to be able to utilize our space.
No, it's dope. Let's talk about the DEI workshops, because as we know, DEI is like under attack. Yeah. And Florida just announced they're eliminating positions at all these colleges, and it's just a nationwide thing. But now you're being proactive and kind of incorporating some training through Narrative Project.
Yeah. So before I start on that, did you hear that part of the reason the door flew off the plane was because of DEI hires? You heard that?
No, I did not.
Ask Elon Musk, and that's exactly what
did not.
happened.
Well,
Serious?
Yeah, well, he's written some stuff on
Right.
on X that's just obnoxious.
It's obnoxious.
And, yeah,
So to your point, I think DEI is under attack from all avenues and all angles. And I think one of the things that we'll see is that these huge jumps.
Yeah.
Like DEI is the reason Alaskan Airlines had a door fly off of its plane. It's a huge jump. But the trainings and workshops that we've started to develop and will continue to develop sort of harken back to our roots. Back in 2015, when the Narrative Project was mostly in the space of doing community conversations before we solidified ourselves as a public relations agency, we were going to various organizations to do like a staff retreat, or churches would have us come out and talk to their parent groups or their youth groups. We would do youth symposiums wherever people asked us to come out to. We would I've done trainings with teachers and all these sorts of things, and these were trainings that we devised on principles of public relations and how do you relate to someone individually, which is at its core what public relations is about. We can talk about the spin doctor piece and all these other things, but at its core, public relations is about connecting with people.
Right.
And because of that, there's this easy through line to DEI and DEI workshops and trainings that allow you to think about the ways, the four of us in this room are different in a number of ways, right? It is probably exponential, the different ways between you and I, and then you and I, and then you and him, that we're all different. When we embrace those differences and figure out how to relate through those differences, I think a number of things happen. Number one, you become better at your job, right? No matter what the industry is, you become better at your job. Let's even say it's customer service. What better position
more
than
empathy.
customer? Right? You need more empathy. You can talk to more people. You can relate to more people. And so we are doing a lot of workshops that go beyond the, privilege walk or the sort of identity circles.
What is that?
Privilege walks. So privilege.
That's not like walking like George Jefferson or anything.
Nah. If someone walks like George Jefferson during one of my privilege walks, I would have been like, and this is the example. So a privilege walk is an exercise where everyone starts on the same line. It's a bit of a starting line. And it is an exercise that allows everyone to see the physical manifestation of space.
Oh, like a head start.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Like it shows you the physical manifestation of space that privilege puts between us. So the facilitator will ask a question like, take a step forward if you had more than 50 books in your house growing up. And what ends up happening because of the questions that typically give people an advantage or a leg up here in the US, what we tend to see is the folks who are at the front tend to be male and white. The folks in the middle tend to be white and female, some males of color, but the folks in the back tend to be dark-skinned. When you have questions that are around colorism, tend to be women, tend to be women of color, right? And so you really have sometimes, for the first time, individuals seeing how these questions, it's a visualization for the first time, and you weren't able to see that, and it makes people uncomfortable to some degree. Imagine being the white guy all the way at the front, and through no fault of your own, you're up here, and then imagine being the black woman all the way at the back, and it's like, listen, I have a PhD, I have a X, Y, and Z, and I'm still at the back. Understand how this still. These things that are reduced down to race, gender, and colorism still separate us in this way. And so we're going back to our roots in some ways, where we are creating these workshops that can be used by nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, public organizations that allow people to relate to people better.
So it's run by TNP though.
Yep.
You guys are facilitating these classes.
Exactly. So you can bring TNP in to do a one-day workshop, a multi-day workshop. We've also offered things like trainings that are just 1 hour trainings. You don't get as much out of those 1 hour trainings, but they are free to access. And so I definitely recommend people go those routes as well and follow us on social media in order to find out when those are happening.
Yeah, awesome. So and maybe just do a quick recap of some of the other services in addition to the training, and then how people can find you on social and what's the best way to reach you.
For sure. So the Narrative Project is a full service public relations and communications agency. So we offer everything from communications research, earned media management and support, social media management and support, owned media management and support. We can support you with your paid media. So that looks like billboards, bus ads, that looks like TV spots. When it comes to content creation for social media management, we do social first video, as well as graphic design. We can Connecticut Voices for Children is one of our partners, and we do all of their reports. Focus groups, qualitative research. If you really want to figure out if your voice is working for your constituency or stakeholders, we can come in and do that research for you. Web development, all the way up to and including these DEI workshops.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then just give the URL.
Yeah, so you can reach us at thenarrativeproject.com, and you can reach us on social media at The Narrative Project on Instagram and Threads. We are no longer on Twitter. We have divested, but you can find us on Facebook and LinkedIn at The Narrative Project.
Awesome. And listen, I know that our some of our service offerings overlap, but we're great partners. We've worked together. You've hired us. We've sent clients your way and hired you, and we look forward to continuing that relationship. We really admire everything you've built. And I think now maybe you can mentor me a little bit. I know these guys are like 4-day work week. Yeah. We'll
Call her up.
Call her up.
Ready for the workshop? Well,
Here we go.
Do you have a 4-day work week workshop? Yeah. Come in and convince Ramon.
When he like respond, must be nice. Like this is in your power.
I didn't actually
you control this.
You are the boss.
You are the boss.
Wait a minute. Oh man. Well, thank you. This is awesome. It's always fun to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode of Mission Control. Until next time, this is your host, Ramon Peralta with Peralta Design, and we launch brands.